And here we go. Uh, you know what season it is. It's tier list season. Uh, so I decided to throw my own thoughts into the ring, but it's a little just like boring to make random guesses myself as to what decks are going to be what tier. So we're going to let the wheel decide for us today. Um, I have all the decks here that I think have any chance at being meta. I honestly may have forgotten one or two. If I did, just let me know. And then I have the wheel over here. We have Rogue, Tier 1, and Tier 2. I don't have an everything else category because that would be so many other decks. Um, and I wanted to keep this like as meta relevant as possible. But we're going to start at the top here with Alistair and Friends. This is mostly like the invoked Shaddoll Dogmatica deck. So let's see where Alistair ends up landing. It's like it knows. So Alistair and Friends are going to be up at tier 1. It makes sense. I do feel like we're going into more of a control meta again. And that deck is really good at that. Just controlling the game, managing resources, outgrinding the opponent. Winda is a heck of a card. So next is Dino, which is again all encompassing for like Scrap Dino, True King Dino, going second Dino. Rogue, I don't necessarily agree with that, but I also wouldn't be surprised. Losing 2 Misk hurts the consistency and it makes the deck a lot more vulnerable to hand traps. You can actually get hit by Nibiru more often now. And especially after playtesting with Kyle the other day, the deck does seem a little like brickier than it was before. But as I said in the podcast, that could just be a deck building issue. I think this deck did actually get a top over the weekend in the Extravaganza. It's more like a go second build with 1 Scrap Raptor, a True King Lithosagem, and a Dragonic Diagram. And then just a ton of going second cards. Dark Templar here is for Adignister, which just recently started popping up thanks to the arrival at Ignister. And it's gonna show up as tier 2. I could see that for sure. The arrival is a heck of a boss monster. It's a 1-card starter deck, which is just crazy in and of itself. A single hand trap can stop it sometimes, which would prevent it from being like a tier 1 threat. So I'm fine with it sitting in tier 2. I would have thrown it either there or Rogue. Drytron is next on our list. And again, it's like it knows. It's going to be the deck to beat. I've seen the deck play through 3 hand traps and still put up a decent board. Something's going to happen with this deck. The only thing I can see it suffering from like Dragon Link syndrome, where everybody knows it's the best deck in the room, so it's not as heavily represented because everybody's siding and main decking stuff against it. But it's definitely going to be a top tier contender. Eldritch here is, again, like any Eldritch variant, Zoo Lich, Amazement Lich, Invoked Lich. Tier 1. Oh. I do think we're going into more of a control heavy meta, but tier 1 I would think is a little high for that. It's definitely still a very solid deck, still really good at grinding stuff out. Nothing from the deck has been hit outside of like Drident getting hit in Zulich. So I definitely wouldn't be surprised if it started popping up more often now. But That would be an interesting one. Electromite is for Pendulum. It could be Pen Mag, could be Endymion. Rogue sounds about right. Even with 2 Double Iris and a Skullcrabat, Dagda Tornado Dragon Scythe just isn't really enough to win games. The Pendulum Graphs are good, but especially post-siding and with Anti-Spell Fragrance being in the format, the deck just isn't going to have a lot of room to maneuver. I do think it'll pop up more because the power levels of all the decks are much closer now after the ban list, but Rogue definitely sounds right for this one. You have the ban card here, Elpie. I should probably find another card for to represent Dragon Link now that Elpie's banned. But regardless, ooh, Dragon Link sticking at tier 1. There's definitely ways that could happen. The Elpie and Striker Dragon hits did hurt, but this deck has so many fans, they're going to figure something out. Well, it may not end up in tier 1, it's likely still going to stick around in tier 2. There are so many different variants that you can play. I've even, Revs brought up, like, Dogmatica Dragon Link, which to me is just weird. But, sure, whatever. Yeah, that would definitely give Konami a headache if Dragon Link stuck around in tier 1. Engage is back, and so is Striker. So let's see where the wheel decides to put them. Tier 2. Okay, that was almost Rogue. Tier 2 sounds about right. It's showing up a lot in, like, pre-list tournaments that are playing post-list ban list. But I think that's more a sign of people trying out the deck than it actually being really good. One Engage is incredibly powerful, but if Crow finds its way back into the format, it's all you do is Crow the Engage and you're back to playing against pre-list Striker, which is still decent, but it's not nearly as good. Firewall Dragon here is for Code Talkers, which is a deck that I really like, but apparently the wheel doesn't. Rogue is. I can kind of see that. It's a deck that aims to extra link the opponent and lock them out of the extra monster zone. But you look at outside the top list here in this like imaginary format, and really Dragon Link is the only one that cares about the extra monster zone. Other than that, you're putting with Code Talker, you're putting up like a bounce with Firewall Dragon, maybe a negate if you're playing Trigate, and like the trap card if you have it. It's a fairly easy deck to counter overall. I do like the deck, but Rogue honestly sounds about right. And another returning deck here in Salamangreat. Looks like it's going to be Salaman Mediocre. Tier 2. Right there with its returning Brethren and Striker. It's still a solid deck. I do think the game has evolved past it a little bit. There are so many cards out there that can't be destroyed with card effects that are in the meta. You have the Arrival, you have Winda, you have Dragoon. Just some of the biggest problem cards right now, Salad just doesn't really have a way to handle. Outside of like making a big access code. So I can see it hanging around tier 2, like people still want to play the deck, it'll show up, it'll top a few times, but it's not gonna rock anything. Gren Maju is like the definition of Rogue, but in an open format like this, I feel like a straight up going second, normal summon a card, and swing deck has a chance. I wasn't thinking tier 1 chance, but sure, why not? You can build a case for it. Just like any going second deck, you just tech in whatever cards are good for the meta. You can even go first if you want, just set a ton of floodgates and wait until you can get the Gren Maju. The deck has plenty of room for tech options. Like I said, between hand traps, floodgates, they can play Super Poly. Well, I don't think it's tier 1. I do think it's going to start showing up again. And then you have Subterror here, which is almost just like generic anti-meta. MBT's been playing around with Amazement Guru, which looks pretty cool. I actually kind of want to try Amazement Geist. I should have put Geist on the list, but I'll just stick it here under like general control anti-meta. They're basically the same deck. Tier 1, if this comes true, this is going to be a really diverse format at the top levels. So, control meta almost right across the board outside of like Combo and Dragon Link and OTK in Gren. And I guess Drytron's combo, although from what I've seen, it actually it looks to end on like a Herald, and hand traps, which, while it takes a combo to get there, to me feels more control. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, I wouldn't really argue with this. The only one that I think is way away from where it should be is Gren, but we let the wheel decide, so that's the price that we pay. But overall, this looks fine. I do think dinos will end up being a little higher once people figure out the ratios in the deck list. But let me know what you guys think down below. If I really missed a lot of other decks, I can always add them to this and run it back. Otherwise, I would not argue with this meta outside of maybe the price point. Have a great day.